What's up, YouTube? It's Bishy here, and first and foremost, I want to tell you that there's no gameplay in this video. If you're only here to find out what the character is, please check the description. I'll have the path of building link for you. I don't have much more to add if you're not interested in just hearing me talk. So again, check the description and you'll find out all this information, I'm sure, faster than I can even say it. So please do that. If you are interested in hearing more about this character, stay tuned, because I will talk your ear off real quick. Starting with the Ascendency, this time being a Chieftain instead of a normal Pathfinder. And why Chieftain? Well, it's because I have a good build planned after this. Once I have enough currency farmed up in lab, I'm going to straight up transition out of lab farming and into endgame boss farming. It'll be beautiful. I'll be using items such as the Comb's Heart, Zoph's Blood. I'm not going to go into too much more detail. Stay tuned. I will have a gameplay video for that character in the future. Okay, so hit that sub button if you're interested in seeing that. It'll be somewhere around 3 million DPS. It's just going to take about a week to get put together. Okay, so moving on to the Ascendency here. The Chieftain has a huge amount of damage readily available through very easily obtainable Ascendancies. Flame's Advance is going to be the first Ascendancy we take. And real quick, before I get any further, guys, Path of Building has an option for you to change skill trees. So what I've gone ahead and done is made a pseudo leveling skill tree guide by like check marking points. Okay, so 52, 73, or sorry, 72, 93, you can see here. And this will also give you an idea of what Ascendancy nodes to take and in what order. Before moving on any further, I want to tell you that I will be leveling with Sunder and using these axe nodes early on. And when I get to the end game and have my Ichimonji, I will be respecking out of these and into the sword nodes. That's the extent of the respec. Just wanted to make that clear so there's no confusion. I'm leveling with Sunder. Okay, my dudes? Okay. So the first node here is Flame's Advance. This gives you a huge amount of damage by helping you convert physical to fire, giving you penetration, and sometimes giving you a big old damage buff by converting, sorry, not converting, by gaining 70% of physical damage as extra fire. Okay, it'll be huge when this thing procs. Now, keep in mind that the damage here on my Path of Building is not calculated with that buff up, but you will have it, and it will add a huge amount of damage to your character, so keep that in mind. Second Ascendancy we would take is the Forest Strength. This is simply for life regen, which is beautiful in the Labyrinth, you all know that. Physical damage reduction by giving you a easy way to generate endurance charges during maps, lab, whatever else. You also get damage per charge. Beautiful node right there. But the bread and butter of this this tree here is the Sun's Light. You get 100% fire res, which is huge. It's so big. It helps you cap out so much. It's beautiful, great node. I love it. 1% of life regenerated per second. Pretty much necessary. Like I said, we're stacking life regen and physical damage reduction so we can make it through the traps no problem. This will be a lot more tanky than the Pathfinders I've had in the past, and it will retain a majority of that speed so long as you don't mind leap slamming. Okay, so we have physical damage taken as fire and extra life regen if you've taken a fire damage from hit recently. The final Ascendancy node we would take is the Death's Fury node. For fire damage leached as life, increased strength, and a 10% chance to cover rare or unique enemies in ash for 10 seconds, which increases your fire damage done to them, which is beautiful. Okay, so that's the Ascendancy. It'll all start to make sense in a second when I show you the gear. I'm not really going to cover the skill tree because you guys can do that on your own. Like I said, switch between the points here. In the interest of time here, I'm just going to keep moving forward here. Go to the skills. Actually, we'll cover the gear first, and then we'll talk about the skills. I have the Dune Beastiary in my main hand to increase damage per 8 strength. Okay, so that's why the Chieftain's node, Death's Fury, is so valuable here. You increase all your strength by 10%. It's nice, it scales well. Should be fairly cheap early on. I don't know for sure. It might not be cheap. I'm sorry if it's not. But these are the 3 required uniques. That's it. Just these 3. If you can get these 3, you're going to be flying. No problem. Ichimonji, you could use a physical damage sword if you find it and not use the unique Ichimonji. But I find that this sword, for being 10 to 15 KS early league, is actually quite valuable. It's got insane attacks per second. It increases the effective buffs on you, which will increase your Fortify effect. And I don't know this for sure, but it might also increase your Flames Advanced buff, where you get 70% of physical as extra fire. It might not. I'm sure somebody will correct me if I'm wrong. But it's all around a good budget option for a sword. The Bringer of Rain is probably the bread and butter here because of a few reasons. It is a pseudo 7 link. You get free links. This helmet, I know for sure, is going to be between 40 and 60 Chaos early league, which might suck for some of you. But if you guys can get a head start on the league, it's really not that bad to make that much currency, especially when you get an item this valuable. The important things to note here are that it gives you free blind, a pretty good amount of life, endurance charges when you block, and 6% block on the actual item, which isn't too bad because when you dual wield, you have 15% chance straight up, okay? So 23% chance to block total, and it's nice. Wait, no, it's not 15, it's more than that. Anyways, I can't math. The gloves. These are labeled appropriately based on how valuable they are for the character. I labeled these as trash can because they're not insanity crafted gloves. If they were insanity crafted for the extra movement speed and attack speed for socketed gems, they'd be much better. But early in the league, all you want is dexterity to help you sustain high level green gems, life, some resistances, and you need mana leech somewhere. Doesn't have to be on the gloves. I think you can get it on a jewel as well, but you need that somewhere because it will save you 2 points and a flask slot. Okay, so try to get that anywhere on your gear, but do your best to get dexterity here or anywhere else. You'll see why in a second. Moving on to the boots, these are actually decent, as you can tell. High life, great resistances, 30% movement speed. You don't really need resistances this high. I have only made this pair of boots the way they are because I'm trying to balance the Wise Oak here. You can see all my resistances are just slightly overcapped, and they are all equal. Now, this is going to be very difficult for you to do early league, and it might not happen. It might not happen. But if you can do it, it will be absolutely huge. Do your best. Do your best to make all your resistances identical. Like I said, if you can't make that happen, just make sure your fire resistance is higher than cold and lightning. Maybe even try to make cold and lightning tied for the lowest, right? So let's say fire is at 49. Make sure cold and lightning are at 48, 48, right? It doesn't have to be those specific numbers. I'm just saying the reason this flask is doubly important is because you get 10% reduced damage taken for each element for which your uncapped LE resistance is lowest. One of the only ways this character is actually going to die in lab is LE damage. You need this flask to mitigate as much as you can, and that's why it's important to cap all 3 resistances so you always have an equal amount of damage mitigation for each element here. It really will help long term, I promise. So getting back on track here, we'll talk about the amulet. It has a dex and an intellect base. It's got fizz and life, which is, in my opinion, mediocre. This amulet shouldn't cost you too much money. If you can get dexterity as an actual stat on this item, I'm not sure how much it would cost, but it would save you a point on the skill tree right here, which you could then allocate to get more life or damage if you so choose. So keep that in mind. You're going to need dex and intellect on jewelry or gear. Okay, so the rings are similar to the amulet in a way, except these here are cold and lightning resistance 2-stone rings. And like I was talking about a second ago, the Wise Oak is the reason for this. You do not need identical rings so long as the end goal is to cap out your resistances equally. I found that it would probably be easier with 2-stone rings because you can bless the implicits, which doesn't cost too much, and it would probably be a decent option to kind of bring things in line with each other. So these rings shouldn't be too expensive. They might be a couple chaos early on. I can't know for sure yet. We'll see how it goes. The belt is the affordable.jpg heavy belt. I mean, come on, this thing's ridiculously cheap, and it's all you need. If you do have enough currency to upgrade your belt, you can go for the Perseverance, and in fact, I would do that. This should probably be your first upgrade. Once you have all the gear, as you see here, the first thing you should do is work towards a Perseverance, but it's not mandatory early on. I don't think it's very cheap early on either, so keep that in mind. So I'm going to go back to affordable.jpg and then the Flasks. Okay, the at series promise should run you between like 7 and 15 chaos, depending on how early you get it. I personally wouldn't pay a whole lot more for that, because while it does give you a decent amount of damage, it's absolutely not mandatory, especially for mapping early on when your damage isn't that high. You're not going to be getting a whole lot of returns for it. Maybe in exchange you could run a Jade, you can run a Stib Knight, you can run whatever else that helps out in any way, shape, or form. It doesn't matter. The Wise Oak will be pretty important on the other hand. It's going to offer you quite a bit of damage and survivability, especially early on. If you need that 35% all res, it could be nice. I think it's expensive though. Expensive to me early league would be between 15-20C. Even if it's 10C, that's like that's not bad, but you know, 15-20C. So the character, it's not using all yellow items, but again, you don't really necessarily need these. Once you have the core items here, the Dune, the Ichimonji, the Bringer of Rain, you're good to go. These are icing on the cake right here. And don't worry about the damage too much, because that's 183k still well more than you need for Uberlab. I promised you that. Granite, Basalt, don't need to talk a lot about those, but just make sure to have warding on one of your flasks, and then you're fine. Divine Life Flask of Staunching to remove bleed. I don't know if anything else is too important. A freeze flask might be nice, but to be honest, what are you going to drop for that, you know? In Uberlab, it's not that important to have freeze immunity, so that's what I'm going for. If you're mapping, like I said, you could drop either one of these, probably the at series, and then get the freeze immunity. Moving on to the jewels. I've got 4 options for jewels here for you guys, and the reason that there's 4 different options is to show you that there's different modifiers that you can go for. You don't need these exact jewels. So here's what needs to happen. First and foremost, take your jewels as an opportunity to balance your resistances. Helps your Wise Oak, and it's quite honestly maybe the easiest thing you could do. Other than that, you're going to want life, always. Always life. 6-7% life, ideally. Physical damage, not bad. Attack speed, but generic attack speed, because we need to use Leap Slam. Keep that in mind. So when you have generic attack speed, not only does it scale your Blade Flurry, but it will also increase your Leap Slams per second with Bright Beak and Prismatic Eclipse. So keep that in mind. I chose to scale generic attack speed, even though it's not the most damage. Anyways, physical damage while dual wielding, melee damage, area damage, all of these things are beautiful. Again, attack speed, life, melee damage. These jewels are probably not going to happen. They're going to be expensive, I guarantee it. 4-stat jewels like this are just, you know, it's going to be pricey. So that's why I came up with the budget option. This is like bare minimum, guys. This should not be hard to obtain. It doesn't even need to be attack speed. It could be any of the modifiers that you've seen previously. Physical damage, area damage, melee damage. So there's a whole lot of options. But do your best to get life and something to increase damage or balance out resistances. And that's pretty much it. That's the character. I tried to talk as fast as I can to make this a decently short video, because I knew I wanted to do it in one take and just kind of talk. I apologize for not having gameplay or anything more substantial to show you. I've been really, I don't have a lot of time recently, and so I almost didn't make this video, but my little brother actually convinced me to do so. So shout out to Robbie. He's the reason you guys have this guide, kind of guide, more like path of building video, which doesn't really count. Anyways, I'm running this character. If you guys still want to run the Pathfinders, they obviously still work very well. But again, the reason I want to do a Chieftain is because I'm very soon going to be transferring out of the Lab Farmer build that you see here and into a Boss Killer build with millions of DPS. And when I do that, I will keep you guys updated. But I want to have a real video for that character. It'll be pretty good. It'll be a nice character. So keep that in mind. If you do decide to make this character, you will have an option to upgrade to within maybe 6 or 7 days of farming lab. You'll probably make enough money to get it within 6 or 7 days, which is exactly what I plan on doing. So that's all I have to say for now, YouTubes. If I missed anything, I apologize. Ask down in the comment section. I'll try to get to it. I hope everybody has a great league start, and thanks for watching the video. See ya.